Mathieu Chabran is at the center of it all as the co-founder of French asset management firm Tikeo Capital, which has grown to roughly $50 billion in assets, primarily focused on direct lending and real assets. And he straddles both sides of the Atlantic Ocean with investments and clients in Europe and the U.S. And he joins us here on the Milken stage. Great to see you, Mathieu.
Thanks for having me, Roman.
I want to start talking about this, I guess, potential reallocation. We've heard a lot about it. Is that real? Are we really seeing money flow into European assets at the expense of U.S. assets?
I think it's happening, regardless of what Secretary Treasury said, earlier on. I mean, we're seeing that right now. I mean, you saw that on the public equities. That was the fastest to move already. And now on the private side, not because people don't want to be in the U.S., but they were overweighted U.S. I mean, think about that. I mean, out of every dollar invested for the past 5 years, 80 cents were coming into the U.S., and that has driven, obviously, valuation up. Europe was an uninvestable place, and if President Trump, succeeded in one thing, was to unlock the value investment and value proposal for Europe, definitely.
And a big part of that value proposal is this idea of additional fiscal spending, particularly when it comes to military and defense projects. Tikeo has been a big investor in the European defense space for some time now. Yeah. How are you positioned?
No, that's one aspect of that. And, the public spending needs to be an enabler. I truly believe that, it's all about enabling these massive investment, requirement. And if you look at defense specifically, roughly 2% of GDP has been allocated to defense in Europe, which is 380 billion euros. There is a consensus by 2030 will be to 3%. So just think about that, the amount of capital it will require to effectively fund the defense project. So out of that, only, if you think about it, only 18% of the spending was bought from European countries. The rest was part of NATO, and US was benefiting, from a large part of that. If you think between 2014 to 2024, Romain, we went from 13% to 31%, of spending for equipment. So you got all the large majors, are benefiting from that. You saw that on the public equity side, because obviously, they're the easiest asset you can buy. But think about the supply chain, all the mid-market companies, entrepreneurs who are fueling, the whole industry, and that's where the opportunity lies for asset managers.
Mathieu, I'm curious, former European ECB bank head, European Central Bank President Mario Draghi laying out a report in terms of what his vision is for European competitiveness. I am curious if Europe, in order to think about their next 10, 20, 100 years, means aligning more closely with China.
That's a big one. I mean, the one thing I can tell you is that the United States of America are not going anywhere. China is not going anywhere, and Europe is not going anywhere. What we're seeing right now is a rebalancing of the dialogues, of the flows. I don't think of the alliances, to be fair, Carol, I don't see, a shift in the alliances for the next 100 years. Now, to be very specific about China, from where we sit, what we've been seeing over the past few weeks, few months now, is an increased interest from Asian money and China in particular to invest in Europe. We've been seeing that, at a rapid pace, and any blind spots that have been left because of this dynamic between US and Europe right now. I mean, China, they're not taking advantage of, they want to be positioned because there is a value proposal for investors. So in this environment, it's not about choosing one camp versus the other, is that there is a reallocation of the capital flows, and there is no shortage of money in many parts of the world. So that's where, we're trying to focus on.
Like with the current, it can be hard to fight. And when you talk about reallocation of capital flows, it's very easy for them to shift back if there's better opportunities for investors, China or others. Do you think this is a longer-term shift that's going to stay?
I think, Carol, it's a rebalancing. Once again, there's been way too many flows for good reasons, but people had become a little bit complacent, in terms of valuation, in terms that, every single dollar coming into the system was effectively revaluing the previous dollar. And now you've got this pure supply-demand rebalancing. And I think that's what we are, going through right now. And you saw on the private equity side, some big statement, obviously from the large university in the US for other reasons, but you had CIC last week out of China saying that they were reducing their private equity allocation, into the US. we all know fundamentally that private capital remains the key driver to invest and finance these mega trends, defense being one of them, but there are so many others. Cybersecurity, energy transition, which is not going anywhere. And so that's this rebalancing after maybe, as I said, maybe a very complacent period that asset managers like us, are trying to take advantage of.
But do you think the European government will follow through on this? Because they've said they want to take advantage of this. The question is, what's the follow through?
Yeah, well, it all comes down to leadership, Romain. And, after the past few years where there was so much debate around, leadership in Europe, what we're seeing right now, obviously, the change of leadership in the UK, taking office today or tomorrow, in Germany, leadership of President Macron and, the whole administration, they got their act together the same way they managed, on the back of the Ukraine war to be extremely responsive. And what I think is that it's about leadership, it's about impulsion, and then public spendings need to be an enabler to attract private capital and to allocate where it is required and where it makes sense. So I'm extremely optimistic about the moment we have. There are some elections coming up, and we all know what election can bring. But let's not miss this opportunity, this window. We may talk about regulation as well. That has been slowing down a lot of the European initiative, and I think they're getting it right now. And there is a moment in history that we should be taking advantage of.
All right. Well, that's a great place to end it. We'll let you get back to work. Mathieu Chabran is the co-founder of TKO Capital.